Mr. Srinjay Joshi, we welcome you. He was talking to you guys directly and engaging, तो इतनी कम तालियां उनके लिए? Unfair. Give him a warm and a huge round of applause. Thank you. Now let's welcome our distinguished panelists, each of whom has contributed immensely to preserving and promoting cultural heritage. Ms. Brajeshwari Kumari Gohil, founder, Bhavnagar Heritage. Welcome, ma'am. Ms. Devki, artist and actress. Welcome, ma'am. Ms. Chavi Rajwat, Sarpanch, Sodagam, Rajasthan. Welcome, ma'am. And Mr. Abhishek Jain, Indian filmmaker. Welcome, sir. Together, they will share insights into how cultural narratives shape our collective identity and impact regional lives. So, I now request Mr. Srinjay Joshi to take over as the moderator. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. When you meet our pride of our nation, can we have a rousing applause for our panelists, guys? When we started, I told you, get inspired. This is the session where we all learn together. With that, this is the session on cultural connections, celebrating diversity across BIMSTEC countries. It's an honor to introduce our panelists. First, Ms. Brajeshwari Kumari Gohil has a BA Joint Honors degree in Archaeology and History of Art. Born into the erstwhile family of Bhavnagar, Gujarat, Ms. Brajeshwari has been interested in the field of heritage from childhood, where she was exposed to an environment of art and historically significant objects and artifacts. Please give a round of applause, guys. We have Ms. Chavi Rajawat, who has been a two-time Sarpanch elected head of Village Council of Soda, located in the district of Tong, Rajasthan, India. Chavi is recognized as the first MBA Sarpanch of India. She has received multiple awards for her service that includes First Lady's National Award from former Honorable President Sri Ramnath Kovind. Chavi's aim has been to make Soda a model village by pursuing an integrated, sustainable, gender-balanced development that can be replicated in other villages. Please give her a round of applause, guys. Ms. Devki, with an illustrious career spanning over 2 decades, Devki stands tall as one of the most celebrated voices and faces in India. Known for her exceptional versatility, she has spent 21 years dominating the radio waves, earning the title of the most awarded RJ of the last 2 decades. How many of you have heard her? Can you raise the... Her prowess isn't limited to a radio. Devki is a stalwart in Indian theatre, having acted for over 30 years and earning the prestigious Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar by the Sangeet Natak Academy in 2019. A global name, Devki has hosted over 5,000 shows worldwide. Honor to have you, Devki. Please give her a round of applause. Mr. Abhishek Jain, over a decade ago, Gujarati cinema witnessed such revolution, or rather revival, with Kevi Rite Jaish. Ketla lokoe joyu છે? Which resonated with every Gujarati worthiness salt. The success of Kevi Rite Jaish was followed by yet another hit, Bayar, followed by the national award-winning Gujarati film, Wrong Side Raju. There's a common thread that binds these success stories. Abhishek, who helmed the first 2 films as a director and launched his production house, Cinnamon Productions, and produced Wrong Side Raju, and later co-produced and directed Hindi film, Hum Do, Hamare Do. Abhishek Jain seamlessly blends business acumen with artistic vision. Year 2025 marks the comeback for Abhishek Jain in Gujarati cinema with 4 distinct stories to tell, namely Maran, Entrepreneur, Manch, and Vittal TD 2.0, and soon a Bollywood mainstream films in the pipeline to be executed the forthcoming year. Welcome. Guys, please give him a round of applause. Namaste and good afternoon, distinguished delegates. Today at Mahatma Mandi, we represent a remarkable region, the Bay of Bengal initiative, home to 1.7 billion people with a combined economic force of $4.8 trillion. Our gathering symbolizes something powerful. 7 nations united not just by geography, but by millennia of shared heritage. We represent something unique, a living bridge between ancient traditions and future opportunities. As a businessman from India, working with partners across BIMSTEC nations, I have witnessed firsthand how our shared cultural heritage can become a powerful economic catalyst. Today, I want to explore this potential with you, particularly through the lens of our region's greatest asset, our youth. Let's begin with what makes our region truly special. Across BIMSTEC, we are experiencing an unprecedented demographic moment. The numbers tell an extraordinary story. In India, over half our population is under 25. In Bhutan, more than 41% are below 25. Bangladesh youth, making up 27.82% of the population between the ages of 15 to 24, are driving innovation in traditional sectors. Myanmar's 28% youth population, Nepal's 19.7%, Sri Lanka's 23.2% represent a demographic advantage that few regions in the world can match. But these aren't just statistics. They represent the size of the window into our future. This youth dividend isn't just about numbers, it's about perspective. We are the first generation equally comfortable with both our cultural traditions and digital technologies. We understand the value of our heritage, not just as something to preserve, but as something to grow and evolve. Our youth are digital natives who also understand the value of tradition. They are equally comfortable with social media and ancient craft techniques. This unique combination makes our region perfectly positioned for the future of creative industry. With that, may I ask Ms. Chavi Rajawat, and I think I open the floor, how do you recognize the role of youth exchange programs in building cross-border friendship and network? If you could please share your perspective.
Well, thank you for that and for having us here. I think this is a great initiative, and I'm thankful to our Honorable Prime Minister for having initiated it, to CII, to the wonderful volunteers, the Ministry of Youth and Affairs, and lovely guests who are from our neighboring states, and all of you from within India and locally as well. To your question, I think this is a great platform, and as I understand, this is perhaps the first of its kind where the youth is involved. And given the demographic dividend that you spoke of, and the technology, which I think only provides us a platform that unites us even far faster and easily than ever before. And the fact that this age group is tech savvy, you're not as apprehensive as, say, perhaps the previous generations when it comes to using technology, and not as fearful of using it either. So I think that is where this platform and these exchanges are very, very meaningful, because yes, as stated and as we all know, we have a commonality, not just in terms of geographies, but even in terms of the kind of background, the ability to hold on to the goods of our past, and be it the heritage, be it the culture, the values, and so on and so forth, and try and amalgamate it with how the fast-changing world is moving forward. Now, what is imperative, and which is what I hope that through an initiative like this, the youth would understand that learning from each other through this geography, being in the region that the 7 states, when I'm saying state, I mean countries, that we share a lot more than meets the eye. And the language or the background should not be a barrier that we should see, but because I do believe at the end of the day, we as humans are the same. And we need to learn to understand that given how globalization has ensured that we recognize the interdependency, and young entrepreneurs and businesses, as you pointed out, do so far easily. But even in other aspects, be it culture, be it heritage, be it history, be it literature, theater, movies, every aspect is where we need to look at how we can bring in these aspects and ensure that these are kept alive while we move forward. And one message I do want to address when we're talking to the younger generation, to all of you, is that what I have personally noticed, because I worked in the corporate sector, in the private sector, I've been an entrepreneur myself, and I moved back to my village. So within my country as well, I've seen how things can be very different. And yet, there is that common platform that we need to tap into. And for that, and also given the kind of global challenges we have, be it climate change, be it, Lord forbid, I hope we don't have to see it, economic recession, or the pandemic that we saw. We have to recognize that, especially at instances like these, you can only bypass it and come out stronger when you unite, when you come together. There's that collective force. And given that our region shares geographies and a lot of things that are in common, I think it is imperative that we learn from each other, we learn from the best practices of each of the neighboring states, each of the neighboring countries, and see how we can meet our challenges as that collective force. And that's the beauty of the summit. Having been part of varied exchange programs very similar to this, I must say now, like for example, during the pandemic, I was able to not just raise funds, but provide skills to the people who had lost jobs, get people to come together, use the benefit of circular economy, and I think that's the beauty of our nation and region, that because of the circular economy, we do not or have not faced the challenges during economic recession that a lot of even developed nations have had to face. So I think that is what we need to recognize. And if I were to cite my own example, it is also imperative, it is also important that we also look at those coming from weaker sections. Because if you're looking at growth, it is not only economic, it's not only urban. There is no growth that is possible if you're going to leave other people behind. So it is our duty as privileged societies, as educated youth, as people who understand technology, to utilize it in such a manner that we can come together to help everybody, not just within our own country, but even our neighboring regions, because our challenges largely are very, very similar. It doesn't matter whether I'm from Nepal or from Bhutan or from Myanmar, we do have some very common challenges. And again, the climate change, as we know, is a challenge we have to stand up against, and we can only do so by coming together. So I would beg all of you to take advantage of this and not just look at being in touch with each other during these 2-3 days, but see how you can work together into the future and make a change, not just within your region, but also across the country borders, and come together and not allow for other influences to break the beauty of what we have when we come together.
Thank you. But, if you can give us, I have a question for you. I mean, to all of youth here and the delegates here, if you can summarize in 2 minutes, a lot of resistance comes when you want to do something new, and which is having a challenge. I mean, in my work field or in my city, in the town or the village or the city that I stay in, what is that one thing which kept you going?
Okay, so I'll try and put that in perspective for those who may not be familiar. So the village that my family hails from, which is where my roots are, which is where I chose to go back to. The reason I did that was because my area faces a very severe drought. It is an agrarian economy, there's no alternate source of income. On top of that, because a lot of the villages are away from cities, what I notice is that the support that is required to uplift and develop these villages often does not happen because there is no voice. And because of that, I took the step. So yes, the challenges were many, but two main things, because from my interaction with some of the people who are sitting in the audience, what I realize is that we often are afraid of trying something new. And two, we also think that changing mindsets is a Herculean task. But from my own personal experience, I would beg to differ. I think what is important is for us to be persistent, but above that, we have to recognize each other, irrespective of what background and what status we come from, we have to learn to respect each other. So the way you and I, right now, are having a conversation where we're treating each other as equals, at par with each other, when we have conversations like these, whatever facades exist, whatever walls may exist, do kind of disappear. And that is what we need to recognize. And I think with that, I was able to do a lot more. And also as a leader, being an elected leader, and I equate leadership to parenting. So it is important to be transparent. It's also okay to say, hey, I don't have a solution. Can we come together and find a solution? And I think that's what binds people together. And that's what gets you past whatever challenges there may be, because then you unite. And when that collective force happens, be it locally or from outside, then any task becomes that much more easier. And we have to understand we cannot work or survive as individuals. We can only do so when we come in as a collective force.
Brilliant. Let me go towards cultural heritage in commerce. Each BIMSTEC nations brings extraordinary cultural assets to the global marketplace. Let me share specific examples. Bangladesh heritage shines through Jamdani weaving, recognized for its sophisticated patterns and techniques. Bangladesh Shilpkala Academy has been instrumental in preserving this tradition while creating new commerce opportunities. Their Nakshi Kantha embroidery tells stories through stitches, each piece uniquely valuable in today's authentic craft market. Bhutan's Zoring Chuzum, the 13 traditional arts, the range from painting and carving to bamboo craft and gold silver smithing. Through their creative industry export strategy 2021-25, they're systematically developing this craft for international markets while preserving their cultural essence. In India, the legacy of Madhubani paintings from Bihar, the warmth of Pashmina shawls from Kashmir, and the distinctive blue pottery of Jaipur represent traditions that have already found global appreciation. Each of these art forms carry centuries of refinement while meeting contemporary design sensibilities. Myanmar's lacquer and metalwork represent some of Asia's finest craftsmanship with techniques preserved through generations. Nepal's Thangka and Paubha paintings carry deep spiritual significance while appealing to global art collectors. Sri Lanka's mask and handloom traditions have evolved into sought-after decorative and fashion items. Thailand's silk weaving, particularly from rural communities, exemplifies how traditional crafts can meet luxury market standards. But what's truly exciting is how the traditional sector is transforming. Let me share some examples I've encountered across the regions. In Nepal, traditional Thangka artists are now reaching global collectors through digital platforms. Sri Lankan craftspeople are using e-commerce to turn local handicraft into international brands. Thai designers are collaborating with Indian artisans to create products that honor tradition with meeting contemporary market demands. With that, Ms. Gohil, how do we explain the economic benefits of creating tourism circling focused on shared heritage?
Namaste and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me speak on this platform. I hope I can add some value to your thoughts. So when we speak about economic impact with, cultural sort of exchanges, a short example of my own personal experience to start the conversation. I was working on a project in Lumbini in Nepal. The project was a UNESCO project, and we were working in a site called Tilora Court next to Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh, where we were trying to understand if Tilora Court was the kingdom of Prince Siddharth before he became Lord Buddha, as we know. During that entire time, I saw a lot of tourists coming to Lumbini, to the UNESCO site, to pay homage, to pray, and I came to understand that we did have a Buddhist pilgrim tourism circuit in place. However, I did notice that the economic impact of a cultural tourist circuit is very minimal. Tourists come in big buses, you go to the site, you touch the site, you reach there, you sit back in the bus and you go back. The local economy is not benefiting at all from these sectors and these visits. So what I would have proposed is that, we have a tourist circuit which doesn't just limit Nepal and India to the Buddhist circuit, because this flow of Buddhism and the religious spread is in all these countries, especially Thailand, which has a 94% religious Buddhist sort of following. But you have pilgrimage and religious circuits which actually create an impact on the economy of the local region. A small example is what we're seeing right now in Prayagraj. So you see the kind of impact just cultural, religious tourism can have on a space. And if we come together where all these countries are concerned and actually dot the different cross-cultural exchanges over the years, right from the monasteries of Leh and Ladakh to Bhutan, to the Buddhist sites from Lumbini and Nepal to Bihar, we can together create a great economic impact, I feel, within these countries itself, just by serving each other in a way.
So I think, Ms. Goel, can you just touch base on how our heritage, which I think you have been involved deeply, has an impact? I mean, showcasing your own heritage. I think all of these countries have their own heritage and whole value. How do that can attract tourism overall?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first sort of challenge that I faced, I'm from Bhavnagar. I think the students behind Badhane Khyal Che, Bhavnagar Kya Che, right? Okay, great. So I'm from Bhavnagar and I moved back home a few years ago. I was studying in Bombay. And what I understood and noticed was that there were a lot of historic monuments. There were a lot of knowledgeable people, especially people who are well-read and who have partaken in a lot of cultural events such as music, theater, drama. So Bhavnagar is known as a Kala Nagri to a lot of people as well. What I noticed was that there was a lot to offer, but it wasn't presented in a good way. It wasn't documented on a global audience. So while we have a knowledgeable group, we have all the ingredients, but we haven't created the final dish. So what I did is I started a platform called Bhavnagar Heritage. And using heritage walks and talks on site, as well as through the website, which you all can access, we started documenting historic sites, community stories, and also leading to restoring monuments which actually needed to be restored, so as more tourists are attracted to come to these places. So I think it's very important to, one, first see your own city, learn about your own culture and heritage. Only then can you present it and promote it or be proud of it to someone else. And I think that was, for me, the first step when I moved back home.
Thank you so much. That takes me to innovation in tradition. Today, across BIMSTEC countries, traditional crafts are being transformed through innovation and institutional support. Bhutan's National Institute of Zoring isn't just preserving traditional skills, it's creating a new generation of artisan entrepreneurs who understand both craft and commerce. Nepal's recognition as a UNESCO creative city of film demonstrates how cultural expression can evolve with technology while maintaining authenticity. This recognition has opened new avenues for cross-city collaborations and placed creativity at the center of local development. Sri Lanka's vision of becoming a regional creative hub by fusing traditional art forms with Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 technologies shows how digital transformation can amplify cultural heritage. The Kandian Art Association Cultural Center exemplifies how traditional spaces can become platforms for contemporary expressions. Thailand's 5Fs initiative, food, film, fashion, fighting arts, and festivals, provides a strategic framework for cultural industries. This approach to creative sector development offers lessons for all BIMSTEC nations. Digital transformation and cultural preservation. Digital revolution is reshaping how we preserve and promote cultural heritage. Across BIMSTEC, young entrepreneurs are using blockchain for authenticity certification of traditional crafts. Virtual reality is allowing people worldwide to experience our culture, festivals, and heritage sites. Social media is turning local artisans into global influencers. Think about what this means. Technology isn't replacing tradition, it's amplifying. When a weaver in Bangladesh can directly reach customers worldwide, when a Bhutanese artist can collaborate with designers in Thailand, when Myanmar craftsmen can showcase their work to global audiences, we are not just preserving culture, we are giving it a new life. Devki, can you make us understand how shared culture experiences, foster unity and diversity across regions?
Thank you, Srinjay. First of all, I want to congratulate BIMSTEC. On this panel, there are 3 women, and there is Abhishek. Which also speaks very high volumes of the kind of countries that we are talking about. Recently, America had its first election where we were hoping that they will have their first woman prime minister, which didn't happen. But out of these 7 countries, 4 have had prime ministers who are women. So we are talking to the countries that have a commonality with India in a very strong way. So first of all, congratulations to your countries as well. We have a very common thread of looking at equality in gender, looking at equality in opportunities, looking at equality in contribution from everyone coming together, because it's a very inclusive idea to bring both the genders together. So this is one. Having said that, I think our history of literature, our history of spirituality, our history of religion, our history of architectural design is very common, is very lucid. As a subcontinent, I think we have shared a lot, whether it is Buddhism or Hinduism or the designs that we have had in our stupas and in our temples, or whether it is Yakshagan or Jatra. When we see the exchanges of art that has happened between all these countries and the ideas that have spread of literature through Ramayana and Mahabharata and similar tales in their countries, the understanding of storytelling, the narratives that we have are very common. The costumes that we have used in our folklores and the representation of that and theirs is very common. I would give you some examples, like India had Kathakali and Yakshagan, or Sri Lanka has Kolam, or Nepal has Mahakali Pyakhan, or Myanmar has Zatwe, or Bhutan has Cham dance, or Thailand has Khon, or Bangladesh has Jatra. I think all of this is, when you visually see it, it is more or less an extension of one from the other. What I would propose in this situation, where we are looking at all of us coming together and creating something together, would be that why don't we have, for an example, in India currently the National School of Drama is doing Bharat Rang Mahotsav, which is all the theatre experiences of pan-India, different states coming together and representing their theatre. What if all these 7 countries have similar festivals, where the food, the music, the theatre, the folk stories, the costumes are represented together? If we can create similar festivals that bring all these countries together and their representations, their best of exchanges for us, then I think for today's youth, it'll be a great experiment for them to have an exposure of all of this coming here, and we also going there and doing it. And all these 7 countries can be the host at different times and create these festivals in each other's country. I think that'll automatically expand the possibilities of knowing each other as, oh, ye to apne jaise hain.
So, Devki, can I just assume this, that art and culture and traditions have no boundaries? And if
Absolutely.
if we collaborate, there is a possibility of bridging a lot of gaps between the nations?
Absolutely, not just within the other nations, I think within our own nation also. Because an Adyam or a Meta or a Kala Ghoda festival or Ahmedabad's Abhivyakti or National School of Drama's festival is trying to do the same within the country or within the city. And these festivals amongst all these other countries would do the same. Because I think what are we without our stories? We all have our colonial past, similar struggles, and from that we have all come together. Geographically also we are so similar. As subcontinent we would have so much to add to each other's history and to each other's future.
Thank you, Devki. We go to regional collaborations. We know that our creative industries face common challenges: competition from mass-produced goods, limited market access, and the need to balance tradition with innovation. But these challenges become opportunities when we work together. Consider our shared textile heritage. When Bangladesh Jamdani weavers collaborate with Thailand's design expertise, when Bhutan's traditional motifs inspire Indian fashion, we create products that are both authentic and globally competitive. The success of traditional craft preservation in one country can inform strategies in another. Digital platforms that work for Nepal's artisans can be adapted by Myanmar's craftspeople. Cultural tourism represents another significant opportunity. Our shared Buddhist heritage, ancient trade routes, living traditions create natural tourism circuits. But here's the innovative part. Young entrepreneurs across BIMSTEC are transforming traditional tourism into immersive cultural experience. Consider how that impacts local economies. When visitors travel these cultural circuits, they don't just see sites, they experience living traditions. They participate in craft workshops, learn traditional arts, and engage with local communities. This creates sustainable economic opportunities that keep young people connected to their cultural heritage while building modern business. Abhishek, how do we strengthen creative industry for showcasing regional talent globally?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think my point also comes relaying from what Devki mentioned about a lot of things that we have in common. Am I audible enough? Yeah. Is there? Okay. All right. Sorry. So I want to start with, what Devki mentioned and relaying from there. There are films that I think we all know of, be it Matrix, Inception, Interstellar, Star Wars, Thor, and Avatar. And what is common between all these films, apart from them being massive global Hollywood production making massive business globally, is actually all these films that we talked about have taken inspiration from the Asian mythologies and Asian stories. And be it Matrix or Avatar, the recent one, they all have, so we have it all with us. Now, what is it that someone can smartly take advantage of it and make a global super hit out of it? And what is it that we are not able to do in spite of us having all of it within us and since years and thousands of years, and which is so common? So when we talk about such things, I think what we lack and what we should all start working on as the nations coming together is actually creating a common ecosystem, is actually creating a common technological infrastructure where, when we are talking about a lot of things being similar and a lot of space for us to actually dive and explore into our common culture, can we create an ecosystem or a technical infrastructure where there is a constant exchange of these stories and empowering ourselves to actually able to exploit or explore our own stories which are common and then putting it out there in the world. While the West would come and exploit out of the East and make global super hits, why can't the East do it for themselves, their own way, by creating that ecosystem? So a lot of cultural exchanges, a lot of interaction between these countries, their artists, creating common, like I'll tell you, in 2018 I had visited Calgary in Canada, Alberta, and they had a common, like how we have this infrastructure, the Mahatma Mandir. They had this common institute which was housing all different kind of artisans, artists, and craftsmen coming from all across Canada, and the only agenda was to push the Canadian story and talk about the Canadian glory. Now imagine we have a space, either virtual or actual, a common space like this. Put a residential for 6 months, have artists and craftsmen coming from all across these countries that we are talking about, and we have exploration of our own stories, and by the end of the 6th month, we have something tangible to offer to the world in form of a story, in form of a film, in form of a, I'm saying not, film is quite a small speck in the entire universe. Can we really create our own new mythology? If there is so much so common between all of us, can we really sit down and spend our years and years, imagine a Vedvyas or a Valmiki sitting and writing your mythology. Imagine someone, us, amongst us, like a unit, a group of people coming from and representing different countries and spending, or investing there, say, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and creating a common mythology for the world from here to create something for the next 1,000 years. So such ecosystem, such infrastructural exchanges would probably bring some light to the stories that we have to tell. But yes, something that has to be tangible. We cannot just keep on, glorifying and talking about our common history and our common mythology and our common culture. We need to do something actionable. And a forum like this, where people are coming from different countries and we're talking about this commonality, it's high time that we act upon it. Otherwise, there will be another Avatar, there will be another Thor, and it's okay. They are all great, they are entertaining, and there are global hits. But when will we explore our own and pick that up from there and make that a global hit so that the world outside of this region would know of what we are coming from or where are we coming from?
So, a lot of, Abhishek, a question to you, because I think a lot of us know there were Gujarati films before and after. So, when Abhishek came, there were films before, and after Abhishek era, the films were after. Okay, people would have questioned you to what you did. But today, being a Gujarati, I can always proudly say that you brought people into theaters to watch a regional language film led by regional talented actors. And today, the industry has transformed. While you did that, to a lot of our delegates here, to a lot of youngsters here, how did it help Gujarati cinema, a language cinema, a regional cinema, to uplift itself from economical point of view to creative point of view, and how did it position the state overall?
I think first of all, whatever you spoke in the beginning about, Gujarati films before K.V. Ritesh and Gujarati films after K.V. Ritesh, lady sitting here, Devki, was the one who actually first expressed right out of the cinema when she saw K.V. Ritesh, and she said this, and this everyone has followed. So thank you, Devki, for that.
I had categorically said how Hindi cinema has Sholay se pehle, Sholay ke baad. The Gujarati cinema is going to have K.V. Ritesh se pehle, K.V. Ritesh ke baad.
Give a round of applause, guys. Yeah.
But he deserves it. Absolutely.
Thank you. But I think what really worked, Shinjay, was actually developing of an ecosystem. Like, someone will have to take that first step. Someone will have to gather and do something. And then once it hits a mark, it creates some noise and it gets or garners some success, the ecosystem attracts itself to this epicenter. What we need is to create that epicenter, create that one example, and then everything will follow, and then eventually create an ecosystem. This is exactly what has happened with Gujarati cinema. Back in 2012, there were not many films that were being released in multiplexes. K.V. Ritesh came, and then it attracted a lot of young people to attempt and tell stories in their regional language, in Gujarati. And then now, while there were only 8 films that released that year in 2012, last year, 2023, I'm not talking about 2024 because I don't have the exact figures, but 2023 marked 118 maybe, 8 or 18, I don't know, 118 Gujarati films a year. So now imagine from what we were to where we are is only because an epicenter or an attempt attracts an ecosystem, and then that ecosystem has the power to operate in itself in its own way. What you have to do is just be there and make those small little mends and let it run smooth. Just oil it correct and it all goes like a vehicle, So that's how it has worked for Gujarati cinema. I think it can work for anything that we are talking about, culture, heritage, literature, cinema, or anywhere. Just gather, create an epicenter, it will all attract an ecosystem.
Thank you, Abhishek. With that, we will have a one last round of, I think, quick 2 minutes. When Abhishek says about the ecosystem, Shavi, a lot of time funding is a question to everyone, right? How do the funds come? How does the product or services can position itself? And the challenges which will come. For preserving what cultural diversity and creating an opportunity for everyone, how do you say that when the funds go dry, what's the next step that you take?
So I think a very relevant question, because I think that's a struggle that most of our countries have, right? Especially when you're trying something new, and when the funds run out, then what? Now, if I were to share my own example, how many of you here, show of hands, are from rural parts? गांव से कौन है? Great. So as we see in the rural parts, and I'm sure some of you would be aware and perhaps agree that that is where the resources are bare minimal, right? And I think that's true for most of our regions. And when the funds run out, of course, as of today, given the platforms that we have through technology, it's very easy to reach out. It's very easy to tell the stories if you tell it right, and here are two lovely people to learn from. Nudge, nudge, network, learn. And I feel that when you tap into that, funds do come in. But when they run out, then I think you have to also be creative in bringing the people together. And that is how I was able to develop my village and also scale it up, also inspire the neighboring villages to do so. And we have to realize, and this is, I'm being a little spiritual, do not take it otherwise, but the reality of life is that there's an end to it. And I think if we recognize that and make the best of whatever time you have on planet Earth, I think that shift will happen where it's not about holding on to positions of power in whatever sector. I'm not saying it's only in polity, but it's in pretty much every sector where we feel that we can only prosper by being in that position of power. But if we recognize that the growth is inclusive and it helps others and it helps us, then people come together. And that's where I think the solution is. And again, I'm just going to cite a very simple example. My area had gone through a severe drought, and we were not getting funds from anywhere. And I had just become the head of my village council. And I realized that there were no industries in my district because it was a backward region. And so I reached out to the government, I reached out to the private sector, which said, initially wasn't able to fund me also because they didn't know me from nowhere. So one, I used my own network within the country and outside. That's where I'd expect all of you to build a strong network amongst the people you meet in the summit. And also locally, I got the village together, be it the youth, be it the elders, be it the children, the mothers, everybody. And we came together, and as a collective force, we desilted our reservoir. And luckily for us, with the very first monsoon, the entire river filled up, not river, the reservoir filled up, and we found a solution. So there is a solution to every challenge. You just have to be creative and be not afraid of trying something new. And as you step into that path that is less traveled, people do eventually join hands, and I think that's all that's needed.
Thank you so much. Ms. Goel, the last question to you is, when you do the heritage rework and reviving your original heritage, do you get the artist which brings that kind of talent, or that's the area that the country is focusing? If you can just share in 2 minutes your perspective to it.
So I think firstly, when you're talking about restoration of monuments and paintings, art, obviously they're very different fields. When we talk about monuments, I'll give an example of Bhavnagar itself, where we recently, the past 2 years, we've been working on the restoration of these old cenotaphs. They're sandstone, they're built in sandstone, and as many people may know from an architecture or an engineering background, that sandstone is a very brittle, a very malleable stone. So unable to keep up with the rugged Saurashtra weather over the years, the sandstone had suffered a lot of wind erosion, soil erosion, and what led to a lot of vegetation growing through the stone itself, a lot of mold growing on the stone. And this is something that all of you must be seeing in a monument around your own homes, because it's a very common issue that we have. And what we did personally was that we tried to find artisans who had the skill set to work on that monument without actually damaging any of the historic integrity. Palitana, our next door neighbor in Bhavnagar, has very good artisans who work with stone, especially sandstone. So what we did is we brought in a team of artisans, and we used a method called retrofitting, where they create the same composition of sandstone, they create the same composition, all naturally created without using cement. It's actually a very interesting process if you see it, where they, soak the imli and the tamarind and all sorts of dyes to mimic the color of the sandstone as well. And we applied that paste onto the sandstone monument so as to prolong its life for another 100 years. So that was one of the examples. And for people who are, seeing these monuments around their homes and are, trying to figure out what to do, I think as a powerful youth, it is the responsibility of every citizen or every passerby, just as you should pick up the garbage in your neighborhood, you should also raise a voice and restore the monuments in your area. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, the last two comments from Devki, you and Abhishek, to one message to all the 7 countries, delegation, as well as the youth in this room, how culture is critical and how can we come together in uniting and bringing our people together. Your message to...
I would say COVID was the best example if you go back and look at it. We all were shut in our homes. We were all going through loneliness. The only thing that helped the entire world survive, apart from, of course, medical science, was art and culture. We were sitting at home and we were going through all other options of art that would keep us healthy, that would keep us engaged, that would keep us united, and stories were the one that were stimulating our minds. I remember people creating opportunities to have antakshari between homes in the same building. But we basically needed some or the other form of art, whether it is in terms of OTT, whether it is in terms of reading, whether it is in terms of music, that was keeping us engaged. And as an individual, I have realized that for myself. I would give you my own example. I was unwell for 1 entire month, and Friends helped me, as a series, helped me survive through that time. And it was such a happy possibility that was being created, which was something that was shot 20 years back in America, and it was still keeping me alive here. And I had nothing to do with their culture and their language when it was released, and it was still giving me that possibility. While Abhishek was giving this example of, creating our own mythology, I could add to that Game of Thrones has been a great example, has been shot in 6 different geographical possibilities with global possibility of actors. And they all come together to create something. If today, I may say, if the world would end, and 500 years down the line, if somebody will find GOT, they would think that this was our history, right? So similarly, I think these 7 countries coming together and creating something like this would become that art exhibit for generations to come.
Thank you so much, Devki. Abhishek, if you could.
I think for decades we have been under the influence of a lot of cultural, since decades we have been under the influence of the Western culture, and we have also aspired to be part of that. And there is no comparison here between or any kind of criticism. But what I feel that now is the time to actually forgo or forget about all of this and get on the driving seat to take this culture ahead. While we want to, expand our branches and, flourish and, explore, we should not forget that making the roots stronger is equally important. And while we also think sometimes we are in, especially for the youth today, that we feel that the culture, needs us, that we would, as youth, we would want to nourish the culture and all of this. I would want to put this as a warning that the culture doesn't need you. You will need the culture for you to, when it comes to expanding your branches, right? So you need to make your roots stronger. Better you start getting back to your own literature, try to explore more from your own culture, your own mythology, your own stories and stories around us, stories within the region that we're talking about. And there is so much more that we can talk and make our roots more stronger while we expand our branches. So that's... Yeah.
I would just add a little bit. If K-pop can do this, K-beauty can do this, such small space can do this globally. We are 7 countries coming together, and we can create what magnitude of magic.
With that, thank you so much to all my panelists today. I think it's been, please give them a round of applause, guys. Together, let's make BIMSTEC not just a regional grouping, but a model for how cultural heritage can drive economic growth. Let's show the world that tradition and innovation aren't opposites. They are partners in progress. And most importantly, let's demonstrate that our shared culture connections aren't just our history, they're our competitive advantage in the global economy. With that, thank you so much for being in this room, guys. Can we have the group picture? And we can, no Q&A today, the time has gone up.
Thank you very
Guys,
much.
please give them a round of applause, guys.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, for doing the honors of moderating the session so well, and all the panelists. Thank you for joining this session with your knowledge, thoughts. We appreciate that. Can we extend a very big round of applause to all of them? Because they've shared the perspectives on the role of culture in regional harmony, and that's indeed very important. Thank you once again, and now we request the delegates to kindly proceed for the lunch at the VIP dining area. And thank you all the participants for your cooperation, for your participation.